Hey y'all, it's Kim again. So this will be video three. The Steve Bannon interview with Jeffrey Epstein. I'm gonna be eating, but I'll try not to be too loud. It's just tuna and rice and stuff. But anyway, I know it's kind of bad, but it's the time of day that I need to eat. So anyway, we're just gonna start it here at a minute or an hour and 2 minutes and 34 seconds. I mean, it's a little bit off, but whatever. You'll get an idea. But anyway, um, he's just talking about financial stuff and banking and things like that. But anyway, I mean, they're having a lot of banter back and forth and that kind of stuff. I still don't understand the attraction to this guy. I'm saying, other than maybe the money piece. That's it. That's all I can see. Anyway, I'll go ahead and start it and shut up here. Okay. All right. Hold on just a second. Sorry.
The magic moment when you're in fucking prison or jail, wherever the fuck it is.
It's crazy.
Solitary.
Now, there's a funny part to that we missed, which is
So go ahead, you tell us.
the funny part is what you asked me.
Is there anything funnier than that? For black humor,
I don't make any black comments. Sorry.
Black carpet sweats.
You asked me what I was wearing.
That's right. You're too wrapped up in the Me Too movement.
Yes. So I was wearing a brown jumper and a brown pair of pants given to me by the jail with the word trustee on the back.
Because you had qualified to be a trustee.
Well, the funny part was it was spelled Trusty, so I wasn't really sure.
Uh-huh. Dumb.
I'd been a trustee in many different operations, but it was the first time it was actually printed on my back and spelled incorrectly.
Probably had a higher level of being a trustee at that than you had at all the boards that you were trustees, right?
Yeah, that's right. Because as the trustee meant you get two devices to clean your toilet as opposed to one.
Yeah, but it also meant that you had some sort of personal fiduciary own responsibility for oneself, right?
In the jail?
Well, that's what being a trustee is. That's where they give you tip.
Yes, you get two cleaners. I was a trustee in the jail because I was able to teach some of the kids to help them get their GED. So that's how they gave me a trustee job.
There's no time. I got to go back to this because I'm like a dog with a bone in this thing.
Yes.
You can't. There's something deeply fucked up with you.
Oh.
At least something.
Well, we know there are things deeply fucked up with this. You will get through in this film.
Right.
But you cannot possibly have sit there knowing that you came from nowhere, knowing that you went to the very top of what is considered outside of science and maybe physics, the thing people most admire because it's like alchemy, understanding high finance. To sit there in what will be the defining financial crisis of our time, like Black Friday and Black Monday, whatever it was, in the Great Depression, and be there at that exact moment, triggered in part by a firm that you used to be a partner in and knew intimately well and created much of your initial net worth because of, and know that you couldn't, someone who lives on a phone, right?
Yes.
Because you do live on a phone, right?
Correct.
You had to make just two collect calls. You cannot tell me sometime during that day you did not have that conversation with yourself of how the fuck did I do this to myself to put myself in West Palm Beach in a 6x9 cell with a metal fucking bed with a brown shirt that said trustee spelled wrong.
So did I find it amazing that I was there?
It's not amazing. I don't want to say it's not funny. I thought
it wasn't funny.
Right. Not amazing.
No, it was incredible.
Incredible in what way? Incredible, like how do I do this to myself?
No. It's as incredible as me sitting here in this house. They're both just two sides of the coin. That's how I think about it. That my life today is incredible.
Do you consider yourself a stoic?
No. I just consider myself a hermit. Stoics are not very happy.
Being a hermit then, being in that 6x9 cell, being in the cell qua the cell was not the problem, right?
Correct.
What was the problem?
The eating the almond joy bars.
Because you couldn't eat the food.
No, right. But remember, my life is
Did that ever strike you that I can't eat the food because somebody might have done something to it? I gotta live off an almond joy bar, one a day or two a day or whatever. Having ever sneak in a day?
no sneaking in.
Your one almond joy bar, it did not hit you at some time? How the fuck did I do this?
No.
Let's go back to the spring of 2008. Were you so wrapped up in your personal issues at the time you were not spending enough time on the financial markets, or were you deeply involved in the financial markets like you normally were?
No, I was involved.
And so we're saying that the smartest guy in the room didn't see it coming.
No, of course.
The bankruptcy of Bear Stearns, you just thought was a Bear Stearns problem. You didn't see it as systemic.
I know you keep harping on it, but it's not
because you're a mathematician and understand systems. It seems that anybody that understands that they had a systemic problem, you would at least be the first on the early search radar. If you're not going to see it, then I'm really afraid, because that means that I always assume there's at least a set of guys out there that have some sort of sense that something's not right.
Imagine the guy who has a stroke or had the heart attack. When you ask him, did you feel funny the day before? He's going to tell you, yeah, I didn't feel right. Something was off. I didn't feel right. I had my stomach was right. I felt a little dizzy. I felt a little weak. But if you asked him that day before, do you think you're going to have a heart attack tomorrow? He'd say, no, I just feel a little weak. I feel a little dizzy. My stomach hurts. So these systems, and that's the issue of complexity. What complexity says is that, in fact, everything seems to go along, and people have seen it. One of the great examples of complex systems is sand dunes. In fact, the sand keeps building up. People have seen some, and all of a sudden, one more sand drop, and all the sand starts running down the hills. That's the way I see the financial market.
When you funded Santa Fe in the early 90s or late 80s?
I believe it was early 90s. I can get back.
But early 90s, Santa Fe was funded for the study of complexity theory.
So let's back up. So why did I buy a ranch in New Mexico in 1993? So that gives you some sense. So I would have funded it in 1990. Los Alamos, which was the high energy lab up in New Mexico, was losing all its scientists.
And Los Alamos was where Oppenheimer, where a lot of the nuclear weapons burned, the bomb.
That's where the Manhattan Project.
Manhattan Project was
yes,
as Los Alamos, and you bought your property out in New Mexico to be near that?
Yes, because the scientists were they cut the funding for high energy physics. But the people who worked in Los Alamos would still be in the Santa Fe area.
They cut that because this was the Cold War dividend, right?
I don't remember exactly why. It was because, again, people thought that physics and high energy physics really wasn't that important.
Because that was about nuclear weapons.
No, it was because they decided, which is maybe not right. This was the same time that Murray Gell-Mann came up with the term quark, Q-U-A-R-K.
A quark?
He picked it out of an old poem, the word quark. But it was mysterious. So they were starting to understand in the 90s that in our world of the physics world, there was things that were just unexplainable. They called it strange things. You gave it a name. You gave it some characteristics. You called it charm. Was one of the terms. It had a charm. It had a flavor. It had a color.
Charm.
But no one understood what it was. Just like the financial system.
And you wanted to investigate that.
I wanted to see if we could build tools so others smarter than me could help investigate it.
And that was the beginning of your concept of the Santa Fe Institute.
Yes.
The Santa Fe Institute was founded to do study in this type of.
Can these areas of strange things be described by some form of mathematics?
So that's what I'm trying to get at. The foundational thought, the organizing principle of Santa Fe,
yes,
in the high physics lab at Los Alamos, right, which had been the headquarters of Manhattan and the Trinity Project, right, the bomb.
Yes.
So you're talking about the elite, the high priest
of physics.
Of physics.
Yes, sir.
Which high priest of physics, some subset of that is also mathematics, isn't it?
Yes, they're both similar.
project out. One of the tools you want to do is to make sure that in this complex system, the finance system, I'm doing a lot of this for philanthropy and a lot for the good of mankind, but also to be able to understand this complex system, the most complex outside of maybe our body, of the financial world. Yes. Did they create tools, or were you smarter in than the mid-aughts, 15 years later, than you had been then because of work that was done in Santa Fe?
No, that was great. But in fact, most of the money, most of my philanthropy in the area of, can you describe things that appear to be unexplainable by mathematics? And can you fund people who have new ideas? And unfortunately, when someone thinks they've been able to, there was a man, Stuart Kaufman, when they think okay, I figured out how to be able to predict the unpredictable, what appears to other people to be unpredictable. But my system, in those days it was called genetic algorithms, can predict what things will happen, and they all want to make money. So they use their systems to try to figure out, they know they have figured out the way to make money because they figured out the unexplainable. They try, they go bankrupt, and we start again. So with a cold view, what I've come to realize is that the attempt to mathematize, formularize, or what in your prior work, to understand what really is, in today's world, still unexplainable, is impossible. They're miracles.
Miracles.
Your first head of Santa Fe was Christopher Langdon from Australia.
But Murray Gell-Mann was
the
funder. He was the rock.
Yes, he was the rock. He was a Nobel Prize winner.
Yes.
Yes, and a wonderful guy. He came out and helped us with the Biosphere 2 project. He came with Chris Langdon. Yeah. Chris Langdon was the operator, the day-to-day guy.
Chris was doing artificial life.
Right.
Murray tried to lead his own artificial life.
Yes. When Chris came to Biosphere 2 for the first big conference we had in 1994, he was one of the most impressive guys there among all the world's elite. Kew Gardens, the Lawrence Livermore lab, the labs at Sandia, all the major universities, Lamont Doherty, all the big Earth observatories, Woods Hole. What set Langdon apart, I thought, and the reason I invited Santa Fe to be part of it, was Langdon actually made a presentation that everything, and he was making this to scientists, a lot of marine biologists, a lot of people that are just beginning, Wally Broker, and people who are just beginning the study of climate change, at that time called global warming. That he made this compelling presentation that everything's really mathematics. It's all just back to math. And you have to, all these experiments you do, you're not, one of the reasons they're not considered by the high priest in physics as being real experiments is that they don't have a mathematical basis to it, and everything has a mathematical basis to it. Langdon seemed like a radical visionary. What happened to that concept?
Go back 350 years. So you have Isaac Newton, you have Leibniz. From move forward, you have people like Heisenberg and Gödel, and what every one of those mathematicians and philosophers came to understand is that there's something there's numbers can describe certain things, approximate certain things. But in fact, trying to put measurements and numbers on other things that are really unexplainable is folly. So 300 years ago, they said that unexplainable realm was God. And people who attempted, in fact, to explain the unexplainable, who said, yes, I understand the unexplainable, were charlatans. They were the occults. They were the astrologers. They were the con men.
Alchemists.
Yes. Well, no, alchemists was, in fact, they believed that there was a way to transmute one metal into another. In fact, they always wanted to see if they can create gold. There's no reason, if you think about it, they recognize that one metal is different than another metal because it has some additional pieces to it. It has additional neutrons or protons or electrons. So because they thought it was a machine, they believed it was a machine. If I can take 5 protons and add 5, that gives me 10, I should be able to get gold. Move everything around inside these systems, the molecules, transmute one molecule into another, and if this molecule I've transmuted it into is gold, I'm a rich man. It's back to money. But there's something strange happens. Isaac Newton says, this is really weird. If I want to push a ball on the table, I have to touch it. Maybe I have to blow on it. But I actually have to push one side of the ball or the book to move that side. I'm pushing here, and obviously this thing is what appears to us humans to be solid, so it moves as one thing. But the only way to get something to move was to touch it or put a force against it. Okay, seems to make sense. Everybody has that experience. I want to lift a glass, I lift it. If I want to push a ball, I push it. If I want to pull a ball, I pull it. But he recognized when the ball fell off the table, it went in a different direction. How's that possible? Nobody pushed the ball down. And he said, this is crazy. Why did the ball go down? I didn't push it. I just let it go. So someone's pushing the ball, because I know that I am confident that the only thing that gets something to move is with a force that pushes. So there's a force that's pushing the ball down. In fact, he called it gravity. He measured how fast it was pulled, but never was able to explain why it happened. How is it? What is gravity? It's this. Everybody says, well, why did the ball fall to the ground? Because gravity took it. What's gravity? That's, as Feynman would say, that's the name of the thing. We have no idea what it is. This goes to Santa Fe. They were trying to explain the unexplainable. Can we measure? Can we figure out a way to predict the stock markets using these types of chaos complexity?
Before we get there, let's walk back. Let's go back to Newton. Sure. Pre-Newton, and then Newton. What did Newton solve that for millennia up to Newton had not been solved? And then I want to go forward all the way to Santa Fe, what they were trying to solve. Let's start with just two or three of the basic guys, but let's go with Newton. What pre-Newton, it was what? And then why is Newton such a
genius?
In such a, in the, I think mathematically they told me one time, I've seen there's been 115 billion people roughly that have lived on the earth. And of that 115 billion, Newton.
Sure, that's a number. That sounds a lot very high. We only have 7 now.
I think the history of the earth, I think, I'll pull up the stat. I think it's 115 billion people they figured.
That probably is inflation. That's why
have lived through the earth. But he's one of the handful of the most important. What did he solve for? Why is he so important for how we live today? And then we want to go through Leibniz and the other 2 or 3 other major ones that get us to Santa Fe.
Well, it's a long journey.
This is the heart of what we're trying to do.
Let me take a bit of a detour for a second. What if you went to high school and the last year in your high school you took calculus? So Isaac Newton sort of invents calculus. Well, that sounds dense, the mathematicians.
To torture seniors in high school before they graduate.
Yes, but obviously no. Yes, the answer is yes. Certain people could never do calculus.
Why is it? Why is calculus so? Why is that the dividing line between, to me, people who could handle that and could go on to do certain things, and people just hit the wall, even if they know math? It seems to me that there's that calculus is the thing that changes. It bridges. That's because it's about the theory of change and the theory of how things change.
It's a great question. But in fact, what calculus does is it's somewhat philosophical. That's why mathematics is they used to be, Newton wasn't a mathematician. He was called a geometer. That's what they used to call themselves. They understood geometry and numbers. But there's an old conundrum where it says and during Pythagoras' days, Zeno's paradox it's called, where they said, well, if the wall is 2 feet away from me, and I take one step that's halfway to the wall, that'll be 1 foot away. And if I take another step that's half again, that'll be half a foot away, then a quarter of a foot. I could walk forever but never touch the wall. Doesn't sound realistic, doesn't make any sense in our real lives of the physical. But what Newton understood is many problems were like that. Many things approached the wall, or in calculus, approached the limit, but never really reached it. So he said, it's okay, you don't have to reach it. We can do lots of the mathematics as if it was so close, it was almost there. And we could do lots of mathematics almost being at the limit. And this is really important, Steve, for today. Because most of the science up until today was things that are starting to approach the limit. You were taught in high school that if you had 1 divided by 0, if you remember
Excuse
your
me,
high school
why does that
algebra,
person look like they're
you were
peeing in the
told,
background?
what's the answer to that?
Hello.
Is there an answer to 1 divided by 0? No, if you were in high school, I'd say, stay away from it. It's the boogeyman. You could write it down as it's undefined.
It's the way the guy's standing there. What is he doing?
It's not able to be determined.
Oh,
There's a bunch of things. But in fact, 1 divided by 0 is a strange thing.
what the heck was that?
It's a world of the strange. And I'll explain to you after, is that when you get 1 divided by 0, you get into a world we don't know what happens. The answer is it's not explainable. We can call it things like undetermined. We can have a convention to say it's X, Y, or Z. But in real life, we don't know what happens when you are actually at the limit. So Newton thought the same concept, is that the limits were God. You got close to God, but you can never be God. We had this sort of religious interpretation.
Okay, I want to go back to Newton. Why is Newton such a big dividing line in mankind's history? What is it about Newton? What is it about what he's trying to solve? What did they not know beforehand? And because we live to a degree in a Newtonian universe, although I realized later subparticle atomic physics, but at least for a while it was Newtonian. So what's the dividing line? Why is he so important? Why is he an inflection point in mankind's movement from the swamp to the stars?
That's a great question. The stars was by Kepler. What Newton starts to allow us to do is to make accurate predictions. Remember that we've talked about that with money, about the things in our physical world, how cars, he didn't have cars then, how horse carriages moved, how bowling balls moved, how pool cues and pool table balls.
Had people tried to solve that before then?
Many
Heraclitus or Plotinus, Pythagoras had these greats that we hear about. Had they tried to solve the same problem?
Not the same problem. They tried to, again, what Pythagoras does, he starts to figure out this relationships in triangles. For example, everyone knows the a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared. The Pythagorean theorem, which is basically says these shapes in a triangle, each side of the triangle has a fixed relationship with the other 2 sides. That's strange. He knew, again, but it was all numbers. This was a system of things in the physical world, and Pythagoras says we can start putting numbers on things that help you predict how they will behave. You can add 2 triangles and make a square, some different shapes. They were looking at geometric forms. Newton says, well, I want to know how planets move. I want to know how things around me move. Can we find formulas? Can I find formulas that explain what I see in the physical world, how physical things interact and how they describe one another? Again, the fact that 2 solid masses, for some very strange, unknown reason, unknown today, attract one another, no matter what they are. People have seen the experiment. You hang something, 2 little metal balls from a string, they move towards each other. In fact, they move towards each other was very specific. So when you drop the ball to the floor of this room, Newton says, in fact, the room came up a bit to meet the ball. The room moved. It's imperceptible. You can't really perceive that motion, but they attracted each other with certain ratios. So he started to be able to measure things in the physical world. And that was great advances. It also, you wanted to move very quickly. Unfortunately, most people, especially in the 20th century, 19th century, said, well, like Newton, let's measure everything. Let's measure people's behavior. Let's measure their psychology. Let's measure their health. You go to we can have my blood test. Let's measure everything. Measure Wall Street.
Their voting habits.
Measure. Can we put a number on how much I care for my wife? Can I put a number on how I feel? And we tried, unfortunately, we try to mathematize the finer things in life, and then recognize that there's things that unfortunately just fall outside. Schrodinger wrote a very famous book about what is life. He was trying to figure out a way, can he describe the difference formulaically between things that are alive and things that are dead? The answer is no. The things that are alive in my world are miracles, not magic. Magic has a bad connotation.
You don't believe in the spirit or the soul. That's what animates people. Is it your spirit or your soul? That's
no.
Have you ever seen someone die? When they die, their spirit leaves.
Their soul leaves, no question. So
there's no question in you.
No question.
There's no question in you that there is some animating life force within us that leaves when you're dead.
Yes, in fact, I refer to the soul. There's obviously a certain the questions in the past, even
because people would normally think you were soulless. So
thank you.
To have you talk about it, you actually believe in it, and have done some thinking about it is pretty shocking in its own right, isn't it?
Well, again, mathematics, Leibniz thought.
So Newton was at Cambridge, and he was the head of the math department, right? He's a professor, essentially. Yes. But Leibniz, was Leibniz a German professor?
Yes. But what Leibniz said is, the soul is so strange because God took chemicals, which is simply the material, like tables, and he somehow made this material able to have a thought. How strange is that? Not only does it have a soul, but some way it was put together that this material substance is able to think. So when you say to me, it's obvious to everyone that there's such a thing as a soul. Now, if you're part of the Charlatanville, you'll try to explain it to people. The soul I describe as the dark matter of the brain. Why is it dark matter? Because in high energy physics nowadays, you hear terms of dark matter, dark energy. Again, terminology, complicated term. Why is it dark matter? Because we can't see it. That's all. What do you mean you can't see it? Well, somehow we see something moving towards this area of darkness. Something, I can see this thing. This appears to me to be empty. It's just black, but I see it being drawn this way. So I say, well, I know if this were matter, that would follow that equation. If this was solid, it would explain the way this particle moves. But I can't see anything here. So I'll just call it dark matter. And I'll say, I don't know what it is, but it behaves as if there was something there. The soul is obvious to everyone that there's something different between things that are alive and things that are not alive. But we have no idea what it is. It's currently unexplainable. I believe we need an entirely different system of analysis to try to figure out. Sorry.
Okay, let me stop it here before he goes on. And then that way we can finish this off. Because this part's a little bit, like boring. I mean, this section is kind of boring, but it is what it is. We will finish it. And we're almost done. About 27 minutes left. But anyway, I will talk to y'all later. Bye.